Paris, 1919. These pictures haven't been colorized. They are some of the earliest moving color images and show the Victory Parade celebrating the end of World War I. The conflict claimed 10 million lives and is known as the war to end all wars. A peace conference at nearby Versailles punishes the defeated Germans and helps sow the seed for a second, even more tragic conflict. Berlin, 1936. The Germans have turned to Hitler and the Nazi Party to restore their national pride and overcome the effects of the worldwide depression. America, despite protests about Nazi policies, is among the nations sending a team to the Berlin Olympics. The diary of American journalist William L. Sharer.
The Nazis have run the games on a lavish scale never before experienced, and that has appealed to the athletes. The Nazis have put up a very good front for the general visitors, especially the big businessmen.
Germany tops the medals table, but black American Jesse Owens startles the world and annoys Hitler by winning a record-breaking 4 gold medals. When Owens returns to the segregated United States, he will continue to be barred from many public places. New York, 1936. Throughout the 1930s, America is gripped by the Depression. Even though President Franklin D. Roosevelt has promised to wage war against the emergency, as though we were in fact invaded by a foreign foe. Millions of Americans go hungry and are dependent on charity. Many families make personal appeals to the president's wife.
Dear Mrs. Roosevelt, I'm a poor colored girl who thinks quite a lot of you and your family, and I know you've done a lot for my race. Will you find my daddy a job as a caretaker or as a janitor?
I am a rural supervisor of schools. Due to insufficient clothing and food, many are unable to attend school. It is not uncommon for a child to have but one dress or shirt.
We are a good, respectable family. None of us have ever been in trouble. If you could help us out with $35, I believe we would be the happiest family in the world.
President Roosevelt.
No energy will be spared to make a major attack upon the problem of unemployment. This is a great national crusade, a crusade to destroy enforced idleness, which is an enemy of the human spirit generated by this depression. (1937), Buchenberg, Germany. The harvest is in and the people give thanks to Adolf Hitler. William Sharer's diary, September the 27th, 1937.
Hitler says in Mein Kampf, a state which in an age of racial pollution devotes itself to the cultivation of its best racial elements must someday become master of the earth.
Hitler robs his political opponents and the Jews of their civil rights, sets up concentration camps, violates the Versailles Treaty, rebuilds and rearms the German army. New York publisher Oswald Garrison Viard.
Hardly a day goes by that I do not meet somebody just returned from either Germany or Italy who tells me how marvelously happy and prosperous people are. There seems to be no discontent whatever. I find it hard to reply politely. I think of the 25,000 men and women still confined in concentration camps and often horribly tortured and maltreated.
American aviator hero Charles Lindbergh.
A spirit in Germany exists which I have not seen in any other country. There is certainly great ability, and I'm inclined to think more intelligent leadership than is generally recognized.
It has now reached the stage where the very foundations of civilization are seriously threatened.
In October 1937, Roosevelt attacks the aggressive policies of Germany, Italy, and Japan.
Innocent nations are being cruelly sacrificed.
He recommends that nations fostering the epidemic of world lawlessness are put in quarantine. The idea goes nowhere.
America hates war. Therefore, America actively engages in the search for peace.
In March 1938, Hitler sends his troops into Austria and declares it part of the German Reich. Most of the population welcome the Nazis, but not Austria's Jews. Moses Lysianski in Vienna to his son in New York.
Jewish stores are blockaded by youngsters in Nazi uniforms. Persons who brush them aside get signs hung around their necks as they come out, reading, "If you buy from this Jew, you're the same kind of swine." The humiliations that Jews are subjected to in the streets are too sickening for me to describe. We hope there are people in the outside world who will come to our rescue. But where are they? Where can we go? To whom can we turn?
California, 1938. The American cavalry trains for war. The four top field commanders in the U.S. Army are all veterans of the 1898 Spanish-American War. The average soldier is equipped with a Springfield rifle designed in 1903. The standard artillery equipment was declared inadequate in 1918. The Army hasn't had a pay increase since 1920. Three-quarters of the enlisted men haven't finished their schooling. Many have no secondary education at all. In size, the American Army is smaller than Romania's. Attempts to enlarge and modernize it meet with opposition from those who fear repeating the horrors of World War I. But new weapons are being developed. In 1938, the Navy gets its budget increased by $800 million, and Roosevelt begins a massive expansion of American air power. The populations of France and Britain, traumatized by their losses in the First World War, are desperate to avoid another European conflict. In September 1938, Britain and France give in to Hitler and allow Germany to seize part of Czechoslovakia. Dorothy Thompson, writing in the New York Herald Tribune.
With this goes the last vestige of law in Europe, the last shred of prestige of either Great Britain or France, the last hope of settling anything by negotiation, compromise, treaty and law, or by anything whatever, except sheer brute force. (1939) Riverdale, New Jersey. At their summer camp, members of the German-American Bund are on the march.
Their leader, Fritz Kuhn, a chemist with the Ford Motor Company, was an early member of the Nazi Party in Germany.
Our camp is designed principally to be a place which breathes the spirit of New Germany. It is here that our boys and girls shall be educated. It is here they shall be strengthened and confirmed in National Socialism as the future carriers of the German racial ideal to America.
The Bund's 30,000 members promote pro-Hitler policies of racism and anti-Semitism. It has sympathizers in high places, including Fritz Kuhn's employer. In the 1920s, Henry Ford publishes 10 million copies of his diatribe, The International Jew. Entire passages are incorporated in the American edition of Hitler's Mein Kampf. According to Henry Ford,
it is rather surprising, is it not, that every which way you turn, the harmful streams of influence that flow through our society, you come upon a group of Jews.
The 28 millionth car off the Ford production line is the centerpiece of an exhibit at the 1939 New York World's Fair. The fair looks to a future of prosperity and hope.
Come to the fair. It's the dawn of a new day.
Part fairground, part trade show, the exhibition is also a diplomatic showcase.
Our wagon is still hitched to a star of progress for mankind, a star of international goodwill, and above all, a star of peace.
61 nations are present, but Germany is absent. It has withdrawn its ambassador from America after criticism about Nazi-inspired anti-Jewish riots. The Soviet Union is represented, even though Stalin's policies of communism and terror are publicly condemned by Roosevelt. Then, in August 1939, Hitler and Stalin shocked the world by signing a non-aggression pact. The diary of Hitler's propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, August 24.
Yesterday announced a non-aggression pact with Moscow. Great world sensation. The whole European power balance shaken. London and Paris can't believe it. Let's see how the world reacts to this smoke screen.
Secretly, Hitler and Stalin have also agreed to invade Poland and share the spoils. On September the 1st, 1939, Hitler sends his troops into Poland. Britain and France are in crisis. They have promised to come to Poland's aid if Germany attacks. They tell Germany to withdraw from Poland immediately. Hitler ignores the demand. On September the 3rd, Britain and France declare war on Germany.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Until 4:30 o'clock this morning, I had hoped against hope that some miracle would prevent a devastating war in Europe. The peace of all countries everywhere is in danger.
The Poles fight bravely against the Germans, but no help arrives from Britain or France. 2 weeks later, a Soviet invasion from the east leaves the country powerless. America stays neutral.
Let no man or woman, thoughtlessly or falsely, talk of America sending its armies to European fields.
Thanks in good part to the European war, increased defense spending and arms sales, America is climbing out of the Depression. A majority of Americans back the Allied cause, but the Neutrality Acts prevent Roosevelt authorizing the sale of arms to Britain and France now that they are at war. When Roosevelt tries to change the law, more than 1 million letters of protest are delivered to Washington. Spearheading the campaign, aviator Charles Lindbergh.
The destiny of this country does not call for our involvement in European wars. One need only glance at a map to see where our true frontiers lie. What more could we ask than the Atlantic Ocean on the east and the Pacific on the west?
Roosevelt succeeds. The neutrality laws are revised. Britain and France will be allowed to buy weapons, provided they pay in cash. But it is still forbidden to send arms to Britain in American ships. Eight months after the attack on Poland, Hitler's troops move west. In April and May, Denmark, Norway, Holland, Belgium, and Luxembourg are soon in Nazi hands, and the Germans press on into France. American journalist Virginia Cowles.
Try to think of a hot sun, and underneath it an unbroken stream of humanity flowing southwards from Paris. And you have a picture of the gigantic civilian exodus. I had seen refugees before. I had seen them wending their way along the roads of Spain and Czechoslovakia, straggling across the Polish-Romanian frontier. But I had never seen anything like this.
Demoralized by the speed of the German advance, many French units simply give up. The Germans push French and British troops all the way to the English Channel. Their situation looks hopeless. But at Dunkirk, 300,000 troops are rescued by hundreds of small boats and taken to England. It's called a miracle. Soon the Germans will be just 20 miles from England. Britain and its empire now face Hitler alone, but with a new leader, Winston Churchill.
We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
Churchill tries to bring America into the war. In a private letter to Roosevelt, he begs for 50 old destroyers, hundreds of aircraft, ammunition, and steel. Roosevelt confides to an aide, if we should send some destroyers across, they would be of no particular use to the Allies, but they might serve to enrage Hitler. Roosevelt sends them anyway. That summer, as Europe is in flames, the son of America's ambassador to Britain turns his Harvard thesis into a bestseller, John F. Kennedy.
England made many mistakes. She is paying for them heavily now. In studying the reasons why England slept, let us try to profit by them and save ourselves her anguish. We thought that it made no difference to us what happened in Europe. We are beginning to realize that it does.
Halifax, Nova Scotia. Convoys of British and Allied ships loaded with American weapons braved the German U-boats in the Atlantic. Royal Canadian seaman Frank Curry.
We sailed early this morning to escort a convoy. Facing us, a rather unpleasant prospect. Feeling pretty grim as we plunge our way out into the Atlantic. Where to? No, not we. Heavy seas running, and already our little ship is a mess. Everybody very sick, me included. What a miserable, hopeless, rotten life.
An Atlantic so rough it seems impossible that we can continue to take this unending pounding and still remain in one piece.
Without the convoys, Britain would have collapsed. They ship enough for the nation to survive and meet the next challenges. The Battle of Britain and the German bombing raids, the Blitz.
This is London.
Edward R. Murrow, broadcasting to the United States.
Wandering around the streets of this city in the early hours of the morning is sometimes exciting. There may be fires, gunfire, and bombs. One may see in the light of flares, carefully hidden under canvas, human beings looking like broken, cast-away, dust-covered dolls. There is great courage and a blind belief that Britain will survive. They know the feeling of fear. I've shared it with them. They're slow to anger, and they die with great dignity. They've been warned that the testing days are ahead.
September 1940, Rockland, Maine. America responds to the world emergency by calling up its National Guard and enacting its first ever peacetime draft. From the Rockland Courier-Gazette, Tuesday, September 24th.
Knox County soldiers rode away to a peacetime battlefront yesterday morning. It was a half-tearful crowd which assembled on the railroad platform and said their goodbyes and Godspeeds. Not a few in that large gathering recalled the days when cheering crowds watched the departure of the World War contingents facing service overseas. The locomotive whistles echoed in the distance. Our soldier boys are in the Army now.
Japan, 1940. President Roosevelt's administration is as concerned by the events in Asia as it is by those in Europe. Most of the Japanese regard their emperor as a god. He reigns over a state dominated by the military. Since 1937, Japan has been waging full-scale war in China. The Japanese take Peking, Nanking, and Shanghai, leaving a trail of brutality, rape, and death. The conquerors initially allowed the International District of Shanghai to remain a free city, where American filmmaker Francis Line took these pictures. Japan gets most of its oil and steel from the United States. For 3 years, Roosevelt has threatened to cut off the supplies unless Japan withdraws from China. After the fall of France, Japan signs a pact with Germany and Italy, which declares they will establish a new order of things in Asia and Europe. The Japanese plan to seize the European colonies in East Asia and get their own supplies of oil. Honolulu, Hawaii, 1940. A holiday paradise and an American territory. Many of its citizens are none too happy that their haven for tourists is being transformed as Pearl Harbor becomes the headquarters of the American Pacific Fleet. Roosevelt hopes that moving the fleet more than 2,000 miles closer to Japan will help deter further Japanese aggression.
I have said this before, but I shall say it again and again and again. Your boys are not going to be sent into any foreign war.
Britain has been expecting a German invasion for almost a year. Under the American Neutrality Acts, Britain had to pay cash for American arms. Now, Britain is broke. From the secret diary of Harold Ickes, Roosevelt's Interior Secretary.
As the President put it, we have been milking the British financial cow, which had plenty of milk at one time, but which is now about dry.
Roosevelt's answer is the Lend-Lease Bill. He asked Congress to lend money for Allied arms purchases. His opponents include the 850,000-strong America First Committee, the American Communist Party, many Republicans, and much of the press. Roosevelt's bill, they insist, will give the president dictatorial powers and could lead America into war. But most Americans are in favor of Lend-Lease, and in March 1941, the bill becomes law. Appropriately, the first Lend-Lease consignment to Britain includes almost 1 million feet of fire hose. Fearing loss of life and involvement in the war, Congress still forbids American merchant ships from transporting arms to Europe. But that doesn't stop Roosevelt flouting the Neutrality Acts and the will of Congress by sending U.S. Navy ships to accompany the convoys. Canadian seaman Frank Curry is in his second year with the North Atlantic Convoy.